Proof of life from Joe Biden, proof of idiocy from AOC, and proof of wacko priorities from the Democrat Party. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment on the Tomi Lahren is Fearless YouTube page at Tomi Lahren is Fearless. The show starts now. I don't know about y'all, but I got a rush of nostalgia when I heard former president in name only Joe Biden was going to speak live and in person, especially after the piles of crap his own party friends and allies have been dumping on his name in the last couple of months. So it didn't necessarily give me a rush of excitement, but more so that old familiar feeling of anxious anticipation. You know, that feeling he gave us without exception every time he spoke for at least the last 4 years? Dread mixed with concern, mixed with suspense of not really knowing if he'd make it through. But here it was, the return of Sleepy Joe.
It's about dignity, simple dignity. Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity, regardless of their standing, regardless of the economic situation, regardless of who they are. You can't go on like this as a divided nation, as divided as we are. And I had never seen hardly any black people in Scranton at the time and I was only going in 4th grade. And I remember seeing the kids going by at the time called colored kids on a bus going by. Who in the hell do they think they are? Every 5 years and then wait around and be, well. I will not go further or get in trouble. Our headboard was near my dad's and mom's room. And you could tell when Dad was restless. I remember asking one night my mom, what's the matter with Dad? The next morning, she just found out that we're not going to provide insurance anymore where he works.
I'm sorry, it legitimately just cracks me up. Joining me now with his take on whatever that was is Republican strategist Melik Abdul. All right, Melik, I'm going to start it off talking really quietly, and then I'm going to get really loud. I'm happy to see that Joe Biden still has that cadence when he speaks. I don't know exactly what it is. I don't know if it's performance art for drama and theatrics, or if he just forgets his tone of voice and then starts getting real loud again. But I thoroughly enjoyed watching that speech last night. What was your main takeaway?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. And as somebody who uses the word y'all regularly, I love the fact that you mentioned y'all. I use y'all and finna and what I'm fixing to do. I'm a Southerner, but this is who I am. You know, what I got from that with Joe Biden, I don't know, for many of your audience, and, you know, many of us have seen the movie The Color Purple. And it reminded me of the scene at the dinner table after Sophia, played by Oprah Winfrey, was able to come home. I think it was for either a Thanksgiving or a Christmas dinner. And somebody at the table said, well, the dead has arisen. And that's exactly what I heard from Joe Biden there. Nobody wants to hear this guy. They didn't even want Joe Biden to be the candidate in 2024. So to think that anybody would be interested in Joe Biden is crazy. And you heard him refer to the colors. Do you remember? Of course you remember in 2016 it was 2008 when Barack Obama was running for president, and it was Joe Biden who said that Barack Obama was articulate and clean. So this isn't new for Joe Biden. Joe Biden even said, I think it was during the campaign, where he talked about how people in the inner cities didn't know how to use the internet. This is the same old Joe Biden. He does this stuff. Nobody is interested in anything that Joe Biden has to say. And that whole cadence thing, I think what the real problem is that it's the juice kicking in, because I think that they juiced Joe Biden up for these moments, just like they did when he was president. They had to give him some of that juice, because otherwise Joe Biden wouldn't be able to remember anything. So that whole getting louder at the end, it was simply the meds kicking in.
Yeah, at random times. So much to dig through there. I did actually enjoy hearing from Joe Biden, though, for a couple of reasons. Because I know that it makes Democrats everywhere just really white knuckle it. And I love that for them. I know that they're like, oh my God, what's he gonna say? And I love that. I love that they have to sit there in anticipation and in suspense of what he's going to say. It's like a real live drama thriller playing out before our very eyes. So I actually did enjoy that part of it. But you brought up the part, he goes off on these tangents, and everybody that's got an elderly grandparent or acquaintance knows that older people tend to do this when their faculties are slipping. They tend to talk about things and then they tend to go off kind of into the weeds. And that's what Joe Biden's been doing for years. But every time we listen to him tell these stories, I think, again, we're all just like, oh, God, what's he going to say? And, he did. He did slip into that time period of his life where it was maybe acceptable where he was in that time to refer to people of color as colored people. That's what he did. And I think, again, Democrats are relieved that they no longer have to carry his water. But it was shocking to hear him say that out loud. And then there was no walk back of it either. No explanation of maybe the time period and saying this is how people were referred to and it's wrong. No, he just said it. And then I was particularly on the edge of my seat when he started talking about his parents' headboard. And I'm thinking, where is this going? And I'm not sure I want to know. What a weird story, though. Entertaining, I think, because he's no longer the president. But how excited do you think Democrats are to talk about it today?
They don't want to have anything to do with Joe Biden. I mean, if they could just put him in the nursing home, they would be absolutely fine with just visiting Joe Biden in the nursing home. And you're right, older people typically have these type of references. I remember when my grandmother died. She passed away when she was 100 years old.
Wow.
She ended up making it to 100 years old. And I remember her referring to Barack Obama when he was running for office as that it was a Negro who was running for president. And I was like, oh, mama, we don't say that type of stuff nowadays. But you made the point, though. It is by the time they get to that age and their faculties start to leave them, they do revert back to that. And it wasn't just Joe Biden. And he wasn't even, I don't even know if Harry Reid at the time was in his 70s. But you remember during that campaign when Harry Reid, the former senator from Las Vegas, referred to Barack Obama when he was talking about his chances and whether he thinks that Barack Obama can win. Harry Reid, this was in 2008, said that Barack Obama was a light-skinned Negro. No, was light-skinned, and he didn't speak in a Negro dialect. So this was in 2008 when Harry Reid actually said that. And guess who hadn't said any of that type of stuff, referring to black people as Negro or color? That person is Donald Trump. People have a lot to say about Donald Trump being racist. And I can guarantee you, if Donald Trump on this day, yesterday, or tomorrow ever referred to this period where black people were referred to either colored or Negro, you would have everybody from Al Sharpton and all the race hustlers out there in the Democratic Party, part of the, as I call it, the race hustling industry. All of them would be condemning what he said. But with Joe Biden, and you see the response, even from Democrats, yes, they're hiding, they're almost like they're hiding like Gretchen Whitmer was hiding her face. That's what they're doing now because they're not condemning him at all. Now, I think that Joe Biden, and for Joe Biden to be president, he was literally had a bromance. He was the wingman of Barack Obama. And I don't think that Joe Biden ever referred to colored people when he was around Barack Obama, but it is another sign of his diminished capacity that began when he became president of the United States. He doesn't even realize where he is, which is why a number of times you saw when he was president, whether he was here or I think it was Georgia Maloney when he was over in Europe, they literally have to guide Joe Biden off stage because he wanders off in Netherlands and he's never able to right size it. And I think that the Democratic Party, in a way, realized that they dodged a bullet with Joe Biden, but they want Joe Biden to just shut up. And to be honest, I wish that Joe Biden would just go ahead and retire to the nursing home.
Yeah. Oh, well, I can't verify this, but I don't believe that even CNN carried that speech live. I was watching on Fox News on X.
I didn't see it.
But I don't believe CNN even carried that live. So very interesting that they didn't want to highlight, the former president. That speaks volumes, in my
They're
opinion.
hiding. I'm telling you, they want to hide that man. They would be better off. Now you got word salad Kamala, and then you got dementia Joe. What a case that we have for Democrats, and some of them are looking at Kamala Harris possibly running in 2028. For what I'm hearing from people in California, they don't even want her to run in California for governor. So the Democrats are really wilding out and spinning out of control because they don't have a leader. Even when Donald Trump, after 2020, when Joe Biden became president, it was clear Donald Trump is the head of the Republican Party. Democrats don't have anything like that.
No, but they keep trying to find something, and there's a lot of just weird crap going on. You've got Bernie and AOC thinking that they're rock stars. They like to go and they like to draw crowds and sit there and jump around on the stage and talk about the oligarchy. It's self-serving. It's just, they're not really going to do anything. They're not advocating for anything, really. They're not running for anything, at least right now. So really, I think that they just like to draw crowds because I think it makes them feel better. So you've got them over there. Yeah, that to raise money, I guess. And then on the other side, I guess you would call it the moderate side. I mean, this is pretty wild. This is what we consider the moderate side. But you've got senators who got their backpacks on. They're going to El Salvador to get their illegal aliens back. Now, boy, I mean, they lost an election largely on immigration. And now this is the hill that they're willing to die on with such passion. I want to play a clip. I believe Senator Van Hollen is actually on his way now to El Salvador, but let's play the clip from him yesterday threatening to go get Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Let's listen.
I'm trying to meet with him. I'm trying to meet with him while he's here. If he won't meet or can't meet, I intend later this week to travel to El Salvador and seek a meeting with the president or other government officials, because it is absolutely unjust and illegal to have this Marylander detained one more day in a notorious prison in El Salvador.
The Marylander, Maryland father, the Maryland man. What do you think about, this hill that they're dying on? And boy, they are really willing to die on it. This is their number one issue right now, Kilmar Abrego Garcia.
You're so right that this is one of the things that Donald Trump ran on. This was like one of his main points, immigration and the economy. And if you look at the polling that's still out there, Donald Trump is still popular when it comes to immigration. You have Van Hollen. I believe that you even had Spartacus Cory Booker, who suggested that he may even go to El Salvador. Now, to do what? Now, first of all, if I was Bukele, I would say, sure, come on down, but you would never step foot in the prison because they can't force themselves. They can't even force themselves inside a federal agency. So the idea that they would be able to force themselves into a prison to check on this Garcia guy is just ridiculous. And the problem for Democrats, and we've seen over the past couple of months, they've tried to figure out how can we insert ourselves in this discussion, because Donald Trump, like him or not, Donald Trump is still polling well among a number of factors. So they're trying to figure out, They've done the screaming outside of federal agencies, using all sorts of expletives. They've done that. You've had people like Jasmine Crockett cosplaying as she were the rapper Sexy Red with a little Kendrick Lamar. That ain't working. And now they're saying we're going to take the one issue, the same issue that when Joe Biden was president of the United States around the time that he appointed Kamala Harris as the border czar, when they said that there was not even a crisis at the border, they're going to use this guy's case. And let's be clear about this guy. Now, I do have criticisms of the Trump administration, because I believe that they could have, if some person was going to be the face of the, immigration's deportation policies, then they should have had someone who probably would have had like a due process. But despite those criticisms that I may have, the reality is that he already had a deportation order. Yes, he lived in Maryland. Yes, he was married. Yes, he may have even worked. He may not have even committed a crime at this point, but he had a standing deportation order. And what I would have liked the administration to do is, or even now, okay, we're going to bring him back. And as soon as we bring him back, we're going to ship him off somewhere else because he doesn't have the right to be here in the United States. If you're not a citizen, being here is a privilege. It is not a right. And I think a lot of people have conflated those. So to have these members of Congress decide that they're going to toe the line, head down to El Salvador to really, and I compare it to AOC, and I'm sure you remember when AOC went to the border and she was crying in the border in her winter white down at the border. It is for, symbolism purposes to make it seem as if they're concerned. But for Van Hollen, and I don't know the record, and people who are out there watching can fact check me on this, but I would be hard pressed to believe that Van Hollen, Cory Booker, and some of these others voted for the Laken Riley Act.
Oh, they didn't.
So they're much more concerned about someone who didn't even who had a standing deportation order, who came to this country illegally. They're more concerned about the well-being of him than making sure that we don't have another Laken Riley. And Laken Riley is a citizen, was a natural born citizen of this country. And it tells you about how much Democrats, they have their priorities all messed up.
Yeah, this is their new thing, though. This is their virtue signal. I mean, this is their main thing right now. And it gets them attention, I guess. And, part of it, I wish the Trump administration would do more in the way of discussing it, because there is a lot of misinformation, and it's actually really hard to get to the bottom of it. It's hard because I look, at all the liberal outlets, and the liberal outlets, they bury the lead. They don't talk about him being an illegal alien. They don't talk about the court saying he was MS-13 affiliated. They completely bury that. And it's hard to find the real information. I think the Trump administration needs to address it just really thoroughly, and what the administrative error actually was, because to my understanding, it wasn't an administrative error that he was deported, not even an administrative error that he was deported to El Salvador, because he is El Salvadoran. It's that he was on that specific flight. So I wish that they would be very clear about it, because I don't think it's going to go away. And these Democrats are just going to keep doing this because they found an area where at least they get coverage, and they'd rather talk about that than men and women's sports. But, what a dumb thing for them to do, really. And not even Laken Riley. Rachel Morin actually is from Maryland. So the fact that Van Hollen has got his little backpacky on and he wants to go to El Salvador, it's like your actual constituent was raped and murdered by an illegal alien. So that aside, I want to talk about another beacon of hope for the Democrat Party, and that's Gavin Newsom. Now, he is begging the Canadians to come to California. Let's take a look. He always has to announce these things with a selfie video, by the way, but let's take a look at this.
The Golden State and Canada have always shared so much in common. Sure, you know who's trying to stir things up back in D.C., but don't let that ruin your beach plans. California, it's the ultimate playground. 2,000 miles from Washington and a world away in mindset. From our iconic beaches and national parks to world-class wine, food, and outdoor adventure, there's something here for everyone. Last year, nearly 2 million Canadians visited California, because here in California, we've got plenty of sunshine and a whole lot of love for our neighbors up north.
Oh, you're just begging the Canadians to come. Listen, I would rather the Californians go to Canada, personally. I mean, not all of them. There's some great Californians out there, but I would, say, hey, if you guys just want to go up there, that's fine. It's all good. It's very liberal up there, so you'd enjoy it. But a couple of things, like I said, every time Gavin announces some kind of an initiative, he's got to do it with a video of himself. So that's one. He loves himself on camera. But what do you make of this? Do you think that the Canadians are going to flock to California with, the homeless crisis, the needles, the trash, burnt down LA? Like, you think this is going to work?
Why would I think part of this is that, and I should have checked the numbers to see what tourism is now like nowadays in California, because you had so many people over the past, I think probably like 7 years, have been fleeing, or at least the residents have been fleeing California, and they're going to places like Texas and Florida. They're fleeing California. I think this is Gavin Newsom's, let's say, part of his promo ad for the 2028 campaign. He's trying to tap into this. Trump makes these statements about, Canada being the 51st state. He's trying to draw attention to himself as a leader in the party. But bro, much like the podcast world, nobody is interested in you. If they're going to go to any place, they can go to Canadians can go to any place in the United States. They don't have to go to California. Yes, California. I know people in California who live in California, and I'm talking about people of all races, ethnicities, and political persuasions. They're great people, but California is not the destination place for any foreigner at all. And so he's trying to make a name for himself. He's trying to make this sort of pitch. And I don't think that is going to work, because it looks inauthentic. It sounds inauthentic. Gavin Newsom did well. I remember during the campaign, and he had that debate with Ron DeSantis. I thought that in that moment, Gavin Newsom, he looked the part, he sounded the part. That type of thing worked for him as a leader of the Democratic Party. But it has been downhill ever since. And even the idea that people are looking at Gavin Newsom as a serious candidate for 2028. Nobody's interested in him for 2028, much like they weren't interested in another one of his Californians, Kamala Harris, in being president of the United States. And how bad do you have to be to have a vice president who was unpopular, where Kamala Harris was unpopular when she ran for president the first time? She was unpopular, the most unpopular vice president in modern history, until she jumped into the race. And then she lost to Donald Trump in a big way. This is after they were beating their chest about, girl power, and Kamala Harris is going to, take it to Donald Trump. She had a decent debate against Donald Trump, but Reagan was a Californian who could become president of the United States. Gavin Newsom is not the Californian who would ever become president of the United States. It won't work. And I get that the Democratic Party is in a search. They're like in the wilderness at this point, trying to find a leader. And normally that person would be the outgoing president or the outgoing vice president. Nobody's looking at either one of them as a candidate for 2024. And they're going to continue to fumble the ball over and over again because Chuck Schumer himself has no control. And you had, Cory Booker, that's why I called him Spartacus. He gave his 24, 26, 28-hour floor speech that was not a filibuster. He gave his floor speech, and now he wants to take Chuck Schumer's place, and they very well may do that because Republicans definitely are going to keep the Senate in 2020 next year. In 2026. But the Democratic Party is a party with no leader. And Gavin Newsom, unfortunately, despite now he's going to run.
Yeah.
And I encourage him. Please. And in fact, I actually encourage Kamala Harris to run in 2028 because I remind all of my people who may have, some concerns about the party or what's going to happen in 2028. You can say whatever you want about Donald Trump, but the Republican Party, and I want people to understand this, the Republican Party will have probably the most talented field of candidates in 2028. We're going to have governors. We're going to have, I'm pretty sure that now some of the people that Donald Trump appointed to his administration, the Marco Rubios, all of them are going to run in 2028. And we're going to have top tier talent in 2028. Our field is wide open in 2028. The Democratic Party, they don't even have a bench in 2028.
And I think some of the standouts that are in the Democrat Party, I think they're staying away from it right now because it's toxic. Even some of the more popular folks like Governor Shapiro, who I think would have a chance. And, he just had his mansion, lit on fire by a pro-Palestinian person. But I think that they don't even want to touch it right now. I think that they're going to let the dust settle on this party. And then they're going to rise like a phoenix later on. But I don't think they want anything to do with it right now. And I don't blame them. I think that's very strategic. If you are a standout in the Democrat Party right now, don't say anything. Just stay back, fall back. And I don't want to give them any ideas, but let these idiots go and try to just fight for the attention and the spotlight and just stay back in the wings and wait it out and let these people fizzle. Let Cory Booker fizzle. Let AOC fizzle. Let Gavin Newsom fizzle. Let all of them just try to fight for this attention. And then when people realize how ridiculous it is, then come in and be like, all right, now I'm here. That's my advice to them, although I don't want to give free advice. Last thing I do want to ask you about, just in the remaining couple minutes that I have, is this fight with the Trump administration and Harvard on the anti-Semitism, pulling federal funding, possibly revoking their tax-exempt status. Now, some are saying this is an assault on a private university, on free speech, that the administration shouldn't be able to dictate what they teach. What's your take on it? Do you think this is a First Amendment thing, or do you think this is a civil rights thing for Jewish students?
So I'm a bit of both, both frame of minds on this. On the one hand, Harvard stepped into it. I don't know, was that Claudine Gay, the president? I don't know if that was Harvard or Columbia, but the president,
it was Harvard.
Who came to Congress and was asked specific questions about what the university is doing to fight back against anti-Semitism. And it was more so her answer was, well, it depends on what the definition of anti-Semitism is, kind of like that Bill Clinton, depending on, the definition of is. Yeah. Harvard stepped into it because they did not do enough to protect their Jewish students. I don't care. They may have a problem with Israel. They may have because many people do. And it's not just, there are people in the United States who do have a problem with how heavy-handed Israel is when it comes to Palestinians, not going after the Hamas, but Palestinians. That's a valid concern. And I think the administration is right on that. But there's this other part of me who embraces what many conservatives talk about when we say that there's the state shouldn't be involved in how, the federal government shouldn't have so much heavy hand when it comes to how states run their schools. I also do have a little bit of that when it comes to colleges. I am fine with the Trump administration making sure that Jewish students, and not just Jewish students, but all students are protected and feel safe on these campuses. But I do have some concerns about how it's going about dictating what Harvard can actually teach. There is no intellectual diversity on the campus. We know that. But should the federal government get involved in ensuring that there's that type of, intellectual diversity? Should the federal government, as someone who's worked with colleges on what used to be called their diversity initiative, if Harvard decides to recruit from a rural part of Tennessee, a rural part of, West Virginia, or, Kentucky for that matter, those are things in particular zip codes, and those zip codes have to happen to be from schools where the kids are largely white and lower income. Schools have, under their diversity programs, had made deliberate efforts to recruit the best and brightest from those areas. So that's why I'm saying I do have some concerns, even as we work on eliminating these DEI programs. What does it mean for those type of efforts, like a school like Harvard? They're no longer, can they no longer recruit from those particular zip codes because it then may impact, or, they not recruiting in the same way from people from other zip codes where the student body may even be more diverse or higher income. So I do have some concerns there. But when it comes to protecting the student bodies, I don't care if you're Jewish, if you're Asian, Black, white, or whatever. Yes, the federal government absolutely has a role in ensuring that those students are protected and feel safe at these schools. In Harvard, from the president's mouth, dropped the ball on that.
Yeah. So my thing on it is this. I don't care what Harvard does. I'm not so sure we should be funding it to the extent we are just in general. I just don't think that the endowment that the taxpayers give these Ivy League universities, I think that that's up for discussion anyway outside of this. And then I also see it from this perspective. If it were Muslim students or Black students that were being antagonized like this, there's no way that the federal government under a Democrat would stand for that. There's no way that they wouldn't intervene. So that's a perspective I have on that. But my thing more is it's the power of choice. Like, I think more smart young people are choosing to go to SEC schools for the reason that they don't want to be in these places where this pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas thing goes on every day, and they don't want to be around it. They want to have an actual college experience, so they're going to different schools. And I think that that's where the power is. Just say, hey, we're not going to deal with this and we're going to go to other schools. I think that's the best way to handle it. But I do think that the administration needs to take some role in protecting these Jewish students that are going to these schools, because it's just not right, and they wouldn't stand for it with any other group. So I think it's interesting, and it's okay to levy some criticism at the Trump administration for the way in which they handle things sometimes. And it's a part of the dialogue and the discussion so that we stay morally and intellectually honest. And I always appreciate that from you. In closing our fun interview today, coming up on 100 days of the Trump administration, what grade would you give the administration thus far?
I would give it a B minus. And like I said at the top, he still gets high scores when it comes to immigration. I think even some of the criticism of DOGE, you've kind of seen that, and maybe it's because we're getting closer to the end of Elon Musk, like 130 days. But I think, like, whether it's with DOGE or the economy, it is how they went about it. And you see what a lot of people say. They're for eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse. They're for making sure that we're not being taken advantage of from other countries around the world when it comes to our tariffs. So evening the playing field when it comes to tariffs, but it is how the administration went about this that people have a concern with. And even on the economy, you can't have, I'm a comms guy, so I'm always big on messaging, and my messaging is always do no harm. But when you have Donald Trump saying something, you may have Caroline Levitt saying something else. You may have Howard Lutnick, putting it out there that some people can miss a Social Security check. I'm gonna tell you, my mama and my daddy, they cannot miss a Social Security check. Or you may have Navarro. I think that the administration needs to do a better job messaging wise. We know that Donald Trump is going to wing it. Donald Trump will answer questions at 2 o'clock in the morning on a plane. That is what Donald Trump does. But I think that there does need to be more consistency in the messaging when it comes to a lot of the policies, because I think explaining that, as you even talked about with the whole immigration, the deportation thing, have a consistent message on this. And I think that everybody needs to I love Fox News, but don't have everybody going on Fox News with different messages. It should be the same message and let Donald Trump wing it, because he doesn't need any cliff notes for anything. I think that the administration, and that's why I give him that B-, is because they really need to do a much better job of explaining what it is that they're doing to the American people.
Yeah, I think on that point, they have been very consistent on their immigration message, whether people like it or not. I mean, I think that that's been very consistent. Everybody in the administration, from Marco Rubio to Pam Bondi to everyone's been like, nope, we're not bringing him back. Deal with it. And I think that's actually powerful to say, nope, we're not squirming on this. This is where we stand. On the tariff thing, there has been mixed messages. And I think that's because you have a lot of personalities within that administration that are very used to just speaking. And so I think the president needs to get a little bit of a rein on some of those folks and just get the message consistent. But I like what he's doing with the tariffs. I don't disagree with it. I believe that this is going to yield the best return for the United States, especially when you threaten the tariffs, then you have a 90-day pause, come to the table, have better agreements, isolate China. I think that that's a strong power move. We just need to all get in line on the messaging. But listen, we're only 3 months in. There's going to be some bumps, but I'm pretty happy. Thank you so much for all of your time and all of your wise criticisms and compliments of the administration. That's what I love to hear, is just honest, intellectual, transparent, and completely frank talk. So thank you, as always, for that. God bless you. Please come back soon.
Always. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, folks, Democrats elected by the American people and paid by the American people are now jet-setting to foreign countries to bring illegal aliens back to your country. You really can't make this crap up, but it's time for final thoughts. They weren't kidding, folks. Senator Van Hollen is in El Salvador right now to fight for illegal alien Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Guess who's paying for it? You are. The Democrat care, concern, outrage, and advocacy from Democrats all over the spectrum, by the way, over an illegal alien especially, is appalling when you consider these same folks couldn't so much as be bothered to stand up for the family of Laken Riley or Jocelyn Nungary, or Rachel Morin for that matter. Yes, Senator Van Hollen of Maryland is traipsing to a foreign country for an illegal alien who is technically not even his legal constituent, but could not be bothered to console the family of his actual constituent, Rachel Morin, who was raped and murdered by an illegal alien gang member. You know, we can have a dialogue about the legality of this Garcia deportation. I don't mind having that conversation. I really don't. I understand it's sticky. But for Democrats to get so bent out of shape and so activated in their pursuit of illegal alien rights, whatever those are, is just really telling. I've never seen them get this upset over the American citizens raped, murdered, or assaulted by illegal aliens. Not ever. Not once. So while Van Hollen and Cory Booker have their little Shawshank Redemption moment, I hope the American people can see it clearly and hear it loudly. This is what Democrats care about. They stood idly by as our nation was invaded, and now they're going quite literally to the ends of the earth to bring back the ones Trump sent to their home. Wow. Just wow. Those are my final thoughts. Please be sure to tune in tomorrow live at 1 p.m. Eastern, where I will crown my losers of the week. Also catch full episodes of this show on Outkick.com and Fox Nation whenever you like. And please do like and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Tomi Lahren is Fearless from Nashville. God bless and take care. Hey, thanks for watching. If you want more of my hottest takes, must-see conversations, and of course, my final thoughts, click here and make sure you subscribe here so you never miss a beat. I'll be here every weekday, and I hope you'll join me.